Gottman discovered in his research lab, that it was sometimes very difficult, if not impossible, to tell when a person was actually in diffuse physiological arousal, DPA, without the heart rate information that he had. In fact, oftentimes, this is kind of surprising, the member of the couple who appeared more calm on the tape was actually much deeper into DPA than the one who appeared to be physically and emotionally shaken. And as Gottman duly noted, once this threshold was reached, there was no turning back. No learning was taking place beyond that. Now, Gottman experimented with getting around this issue, or trying to, by having clients, actual clients, wear heart rate monitors in session. Now, these monitors were set to produce an audible beep when the wearer exceeded 100 beats per minute. Now, this was not an experiment to see if it was actually happening. He knew it was. What Gottman planned to do was to stop the session and help the couple to calm down. So once the heart rate monitors began to beep, then he would stop the session and try to help them to calm down, hoping that he could resume the session. Now, once they got their heart rate below 90, they would start again. And this was a good idea, but what I'm sure happened in his experiment was that Gottman quickly discovered it just simply didn't work. And when you think about it, there's really no way it could. Because once the human body has passed into DPA, past that threshold, it takes a minimum of 20 minutes for the body to clear itself of just the adrenaline. Adrenaline has a half-life of about 10 minutes. And as for the cortisol, which is in the body, that has a half-life of about 66 minutes. That's not even going to begin to clear until well after the session when the couple's on their way home. And that would only work in a perfect scenario in which the threat has obviously cleared. Now, think about that. Narrowly averting a car accident. You were barreling down the road, somebody pulled out, and you were certain you were going to smash into that car that pulled out ahead of you. And somehow, you miraculously swerved around it. And as you drive down the road, the threat is gone. But it's still going to take you 20 minutes minimum for your heart rate to return to normal and for your body to quit shaking. Realistically, it's probably going to be more like half an hour before you actually feel yourself again. So if you have your couples break and calm down, it's going to take at least 30 minutes for them to calm down under perfect conditions. They would have to be sequestered, and they would have to have some real skills for calming down. Because if they sit for 30 minutes and think about what happened, they're just going to continue pumping adrenaline and cortisol into the system. Gottman had these notions of teaching clients how to self-soothe during these periods of time. To me, that would be kind of like teaching someone how to play chess in a bomb shelter during an air raid. Even if you could accomplish such a feat, the moment you got the couple back together in the room, guess what? DPA is going to kick right back on. Simply put, once you get to the discussing the problem phase, DPA is almost surely going to occur. And at this point, you've pretty much lost any opportunity whatsoever for learning to take place. Now, I know this from my own empirical evidence and observation that I've gathered over the 24 years that I've been doing this. People don't remember much of anything that I tell them after this occurs. They can't process the assignments that I have them or I'm asking them to complete, and sometimes they completely forget everything I asked them. And I'm told later they argued all the way home, they can't agree on what the assignment was, and most of the time they end up not doing anything. And I'm not talking about sometimes this happens, I'm talking about most times. Hardly ever does it not happen. And then there's always the quintessential throwing under the bus maneuver, the one where the wife says in session, "Oh, come on, let's be honest. When I mentioned doing this, what Miles asked us to do, you said," and I quote, "fuck Miles and that stupid bullshit. I ain't doing that." Yeah, I'm not making that up. Try finishing a session after that happens. And trust me, that's not a rare occurrence. And that's really the best it gets from even the most emotionally mature people. Sometimes when I get out to the waiting room, I can almost smell the DPA in the air, in at least one of the partners. I'll look at how they're sitting, the looks on their faces, how they respond to my greeting, and I know immediately I'm in for a shit show. But there's no turning back at that point. At best, I'm going to sit for an hour with two people who are not going to learn a darn thing. At worst, I'm going to get a cussing and screaming match, and even occasionally one partner leaving the office completely, slamming the door and exiting the building. And I kid you not, I have often uttered the silent prayer when that happens that I hope there's no gun in the car. And I'm telling you that right now because I'm not being facetious. Those are very scary moments, and I've had my share of them. By way of contrast, when I'm sitting with an individual, seeing these people separately, rarely do we get into DPA. Sure, they still get tearful and emotional, but they don't get into fight or flight. Why? Because there's nobody to fight and nobody to flee from. In fact, once they spend a few minutes with me alone, I can watch them relax pretty much completely. Not only do I get so much better information from them, 200 to 300% better, but the same goes for the learning that can take place. Learning is a strategy that is an intrapersonal affair, not interpersonal. The other thing that I find out quickly when meeting with an individual is who is actually invested in counseling, who's invested in learning, and who's invested in throwing their partner under the bus with blame and criticism. And I find out who's not interested at all. In conjoint sessions, it is pretty clear when a husband has been dragged into the session because of an ultimatum. And if somebody's there because someone else wants them to be there, I don't want to be there either. And finally, I'm not going to work any harder than any of my clients. That is the cardinal rule of being a counselor, and it's one I never, ever break. So why then, you might ask, do most therapists still insist on doing conjoint sessions? The only answer I have is we have always done it that way. Conjoint therapy, in my opinion, falls under the category of common sense. And common sense produces common results. And the most common result of most marriage counseling is no appreciable change whatsoever. That has been empirically proven by Gottman and many others. I get a sense that Gottman knew that conjoint counseling was flawed. I believe that when he did his experiment with heart rate monitors, it was actually a dismal failure. But I think he knew better than to suggest anything other than this conventional mode. Conjoint counseling was the way it was always done. And to suggest anything else would be just a little bit too radical back in the 1990s and probably would have spelled death to his effort. So his experiment got honorable mention in his research, but then I think it was swiftly dropped. Well, not so for me. I have nothing to lose and everything to gain by insisting on individual relationship counseling. And honestly, I don't care how many potential clients will move on if they learn that I won't see them together, and I'm more than happy to refer. In fact, I usually wind up referring most of my couples anyway, because I only keep a restricted percentage of relationship cases on my caseload at any one time, simply because I have so many other things that I love to do, and I keep my caseload balanced. So there you have it. My rationale for IRC, individual relationship counseling. So if after perusing these videos, you would like to proceed with IRC, I'm more than happy to oblige.